This morning we're in 2 Kings chapter 14. Wednesday night we touched on the fact that not only are the books not necessarily in chronological order, but the chapters aren't always in chronological order. And we talked about how we'll jump from king to king and go back in time, especially in chapter 13 that we studied Wednesday. Well, that continues today a little bit into chapter 14. We're going to go back in time a little bit, something we've already discussed a little. But for the most part, it's a little easier to keep track than chapter 13 because chapter 14 is, we'll talk about one king of Judah and one king of Israel as opposed to several. And you recognize that pattern through our study of kings. We'll talk for a little while about a king of Judah and a while about a king of Israel and back and forth. But today will be a little easier because it'll be just one from each, but it does travel back in time a little bit. So we have to try not to get confused with the names that it's given us because we've already studied something about some of these names. But nevertheless, verse 1 says, "In the second year of Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, became king." So we've already studied about Amaziah becoming king when Joash, his daddy, king of Judah, was assassinated. Don't ask me this morning what chapter that was. I don't recall right now. But Joash was assassinated and Amaziah was made king. Well, now we're just revisiting that as to when he became king a little bit. And we're going to, first part of this chapter, discuss some of the acts of Amaziah as he was king of Judah. Verse 2 then says, "He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan of Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like his father David. He did everything as his father Joash had done. However, the high places were still not taken away, and the people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places." So Amaziah is now king of Judah. His father Joash has passed away, and it tells us that Amaziah was 25 when this happened. So he's a little older than some of the kings we've learned already of taking the throne at a very early age. But it says there, verse 3, "He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like his father David. He did everything as his father Joash had done." So we know that Joash was a fairly successful, good king of Judah after the reign of the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. Remember, we learned that Judah was under a queen control for 6 years. Well, when Joash took the throne and was a very godly king. Remember, he rebuilt the temple. We studied all this. So it says that Amaziah did what was right in the sight of the Lord as his father Joash, but not like his father David. And on the surface, that seems easy to understand. Well, David was the best human king that Judah ever had, right? That aside from Jesus himself, David would be the pinnacle. But if you think about it, you'll really start to scratch your head and think, but David's reign wasn't full of all godly stuff, was it? There was some scandals and sins all in there. So when you say that Amaziah did what was right in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father David, more like his father Joash, it leaves you with the impression that even though he was a godly king compared to other kings, there were still some things missing. There were still some things lacking as far as his walk with God. But notice verse 5, he says, "Now it happened, as soon as the kingdom was established in his hand," I believe 25, "that he executed his servants who had murdered his father the king. But the children of the murderers he did not execute, according to what was written in the book of the law of Moses, in which the Lord commanded, saying, Fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor shall children be put to death for their fathers, but a person shall be put to death for his own sin." So, as soon as he became king, he was justifiably within his rights to find the people that had murdered his father and put them to death. But it says that, however, he did not kill the children of those people. And you may think, well, big deal. It says right there in the law of Moses that he wasn't supposed to. Well, it was a big deal at this time because, remember, we've studied this time and time again. When a king was put to death, or the king had somebody put to death, that all their heirs got put to death too. It was common practice among men, not necessarily the law, among men, that if you committed a crime to be put to death, then your entire family got put to death. And that's the way things had been going. So it is a big deal for the scripture to tell us, however, he did not kill the children of these people. So he took a stand against, I'm not going to do what the rest of people say I should do or the way society's treating people now. I'm going to do what the law says. I'm going to obey God in this matter. So he was I guess you could speculate and say he was the first of his kind in a while to buck against the system and say, I know what y'all think we should do. I know how we've been doing business, but that's not what we're going to do. He said he was going to obey the law. And then it says in verse 7 then, that he killed 10,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt and took Selah by war and called its name Joktheel to this day. Now, some people think some scholars think that is the land of Petra, that rock city Petra, but some think it's not. Either way, verse 7 of 2 Kings chapter 14 doesn't give us a lot of information about this. But 2 Chronicles does. 2 Chronicles tells us that he assembled 300,000 people for his army to go take on these Edomites. Not only did he have 300,000, but he also hired 100,000 mercenary soldiers from Israel, the northern tribe. And 2 Chronicles tells us that a prophet of God came to him and said, don't use those mercenary soldiers. Don't use those 100,000 from Israel because God's not with them. So he had promised them 100 talents of silver. Amaziah, wanting to be in God's will, decided to take the loss, paid those mercenaries 100 talents of silver and sent them on their way without them even having to go to war with him. He would rather obey God and go into war than to take the extra 100,000. So he just done away with the silver, paid them, sent them on their way. Then it says he went on and he defeated the Edomites. Another thing that 2 Chronicles will tell us is that he, after that victory, he kind of fell from seeking God's will. He kind of fell into idolatry and started worshiping pagan gods. And that will make verses 8 and 9 make a little more sense. Let me just flip over there and I'll just read you a passage real quick. 2 Chronicles chapter 25 verse 14 says, Now it was so that after Amaziah came from the slaughter of the Edomites, that he brought the gods of the people of Seir, set them up to be his gods, and bowed down before them and burned incense to them. So, after God blessed him, after God seen him through this war with the Edomites, he decides he's going to bring some of their pagan gods back with him. Says he set them up and worshiped them. That blows my mind. Anyway, so now you get a little better picture of what we're about to talk about in verse 8. Because verse 8 says that then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, king of Israel, saying, "Come, let us face one another in battle." So understand where Amaziah is mentally. Hey, I just defeated the Edomites. I'm a pretty big deal around here. He's feeling pretty good about himself. He's puffed up. He's, I guess, full of pride, 10 feet tall, bulletproof. Plus, if you will remember, when we studied, we said that Israel was left with just very few horsemen and chariots, and remember that study we said they had a very small army left. This is that exact time. So Amaziah is thinking, Israel is pretty vulnerable. Let me go to war with them. Let me go, I guess, siege them. Another thing, though, that 2 Chronicles tells us is that those 100,000 mercenary soldiers that he paid and sent them home, well, I'm sure they were happy to get their pay, but I bet they were counting on some other spoils of the war, right? So it tells us in 2 Chronicles that on their way home, they raided a few cities of Judah. So this was political motivation for the king Amaziah to seek war against Israel, because these Israelites, these mercenaries he had first hired, kind of cast the first stone before they left Judah. So you see his mindset a little bit. He's got to make it right with his people of Judah. And he's a little puffed up. But remember now, he's no longer seeking God's favor. He's worshiping these false gods. But verse 9 says, Then Jehoash, king of Israel, sent to Amaziah, king of Judah, saying, The thistle that was in Lebanon sent to the cedar that was in Lebanon, saying, Give your daughter to my son as wife. And a wild beast that was in Lebanon passed by and trampled the thistle. You have indeed defeated Edom, and your heart has lifted you up. Glory in that, and stay at home. For why should you meddle with trouble so that you fall, you and Judah with you? So the king of Israel is pretty much telling him, well, I like what he says there. He says, you beat Edom. You need to just glory in that. You need to just be glad for that and stay at home. He says, because why should you meddle with trouble so that you should fall, you and Judah with you? The king of Israel basically is saying, I know that you're puffed up a little bit. I know you're proud of yourself for conquering Edom, but you need to slow down a minute and think about what you're saying. This isn't a fight you want to pick. Well, 2 Chronicles then, chapter 25, verse 20 says, But Amaziah would not heed, for it came from God that he might give them into the hand of their enemies, because they sought the gods of Edom. So Joash, king of Israel, went out, and he and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced one another at Beth Shemesh, which belongs to Judah. So 2 Chronicles, the parallel story to this, tells us that even though Joash said, listen, that's not a good idea, Amaziah. You see what he's saying there when he says, You're the little thistle, and I'm the cedar. You think you're big and strong, but you need to stay home. Well, Amaziah wouldn't listen to him, so he says in verse 11 that Amaziah would not heed. Therefore Jehoash, king of Israel, went out. So he and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced one another at Beth Shemesh, which belongs to Judah, and Judah was defeated by Israel, and every man fled to his tent. You understand the significance of this. This is the divided kingdom. Well, this was the 12 tribes of Israel that had been given the promised land by God, when they divided, you had 10 and 2, and now they're at a civil war. Right? They are battling each other. And now you have the ungodly tribes of Israel has defeated Judah, which is where Jerusalem is. The line of David is king of Judah. So now you have Israel who has defeated Judah, and it says there that that Amaziah will be held captive for a while. So for a time in history, they were still divided kingdom, but they were under Israel control. It says Judah was defeated by Israel. Every man fled to his tent. Then Jehoash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Jehoash, the son of Ahaziah, at Bethshemesh, and he went to Jerusalem and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim to the corner gate, 400 cubits. So, this is it. This is Jerusalem. Now, and it says he broke down the wall from one end to the other. That's a big deal. That was we all know where, I suppose we all remember when we heard about the wall in Berlin coming down, right? You think about things in history that was a big deal. Well, this was a big deal. Now you've had king of Israel come into Jerusalem and they've tore down the wall. Says from the gate of Ephraim to the corner gate. And it says he took all the gold and silver, all the articles that were found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's house, and hostages, and returned to Samaria. So, I don't even have the words to explain what a big deal this is. That the civil war has broke out. Now Israel has defeated Judah and knocked down the wall of Jerusalem and taking stuff from the king's treasuries, the house, the temple of God, and carrying it back to Samaria. This is a pit, a low for the nation of Judah at this time. It says he returned to Samaria. Verse 15 says, the rest of the acts of Jehoash, which he did, his might, and how he fought with Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Jehoash rested with his fathers and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Then Jeroboam, his son, reigned in his place. Now, see, we've had this conversation before. A few chapters ago when I was discussing how it jumps back and forth. We've already talked about Jehoash dying and his son Jeroboam taking over, because I said, remember, this is sometimes referred to as Jeroboam the second. It's not the Jeroboam that we read time and time again saying, this king did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, which made Israel sin, blah, blah, which would have been the original Jeroboam that was given the northern tribes of Israel when the split happened. He was pretty much ordained by God to have that. But he fell from God's grace, so to speak, when he started, when he put the golden calves at Dan and Bethel. So that's where that original sin of Jeroboam began. So this is a different Jeroboam that we've already talked about taking the throne, but now we're back to talking about his father dying and Jeroboam taking over. Anyway, it says that Amaziah, the son of Joash, which is the king of Judah that was just taken hostage by Jehoash, Amaziah, king of Judah, lived 15 years after the death of Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. Now the rest of the acts of Amaziah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So we're back to Amaziah, the king of Judah again. He was taken hostage. He was defeated by Israel. And it says in verse 19 that they formed a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem. And he fled to Lachish, but they sent after him to Lachish and killed him there. Well, no doubt this was motivated because of his loss to Israel. But the people said, you know what, he's unfit to be our king. So they formed a conspiracy to kill him. Verse 20 says, they brought him on horses, and he was buried at Jerusalem with his fathers in the city of David. And all the people of Judah took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. So this is weird. This is different, because in all of our studies, when you read about people revolting and killing a king, then what do? Kill everybody. Kill all the heirs. They put an end to that dynasty and start again. Here, this is the second king, Joash, the father of Ahaziah. He was assassinated. Ahaziah became king. Now Amaziah, he's been assassinated now. And now his son, Azariah, is made king. So it's a revolt, but not completely, because they took his son to be king. The reason that's significant is why? God had made a promise, hadn't he, to David about who would sit on that throne of Judah, didn't he? So even though it seems like it's just pure chaos going on with war breaking out and kings getting killed, you could see, if you step back and look, you could see that God's hand's still in control of all of it. Because if it wasn't, it would have been very easy for the line of David to lose succession to the throne. But that wasn't God's plan. So it says they made Azariah, his son, made him king. Azariah is also better known as a king, a name that you may recognize. Uzziah. You'll know him from that famous verse in Isaiah that says, he says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, and so on, so on. So this is the same king. I can't explain why it's a different pronunciation or different spelling, but we'll study more about Uzziah or Azariah in chapters to come. But now he's 16-year-old and he's the king. And it says in verse 22 that he built Elath and restored it to Judah after the king rested with his fathers. In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, became king in Samaria and reigned 41 years. But he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Here we go again. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. He restored the territory of Israel from the entrance to Hamath to the sea of Arabah, according to the word of the Lord God of Israel, which he had spoken through his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was from Gath Hepher. For the Lord saw that affliction of Israel was very bitter, and whether bond or free, there was no helper for Israel. And the Lord did not say that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, but he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, the son of Joash. I want to, just for a second, we need to wrap our head around what we just read. You have an ungodly king, Jeroboam II, ungodly nation, Israel. And it says that, verse 26, that the Lord saw that the affliction of Israel was very bitter. And then verse 27, it says, He saved them. It leaves you to scratch your head saying, it almost seems like the ungodly nation, and I can say that because read the book of Amos and tell me if you think Israel was a godly nation during this time. They absolutely were not. So it's mind-boggling to think that you've got this ungodly nation of Israel that seems to be, it's perceived to be more blessed by God than the godlier nation of Judah. And it leaves us to wonder why. I wonder that. Don't we wonder that today? You see somebody that's clearly outside of the will of God, but it seems like they have all the blessings they could handle. And there's two things to that to think about. One, most prominent today for us, more relevant for us, would be that we have to remember that the devil is more than happy to bless you with an abundance of something if it means sending you to hell. That's the main thing we need to remember today. As far as Israel and Judah goes, my opinion is it's because Judah was closer to God. What do you mean? If I'm at the grocery store, and unless they're doing something just completely, going to hurt themselves or somebody, if it's somebody else's kids, I'm not getting on to them. But if it's my kids, that's a different story. It seems like God was letting Israel get by with more because they weren't His kids. Judah was closer to God. He was more strict, I guess, with his own children. Just like we are with ours, I guess. That's one explanation that we could gather from it. But the other thing to remember is it seems like this was forever ago to us in history, and it was, but it wasn't that long ago for God. And even while this was happening, when Israel was divided, God still had the big picture in His plan, didn't He? So He knew things that were going to happen 1,000 years later that these people had no idea about. So we can get caught up wondering why this or why that and lose sight of the fact that because it was God's plan all along. He knew exactly what was going to happen. But I think it's interesting, it says right there that let me read 25 again. He restored the territory of Israel from the entrance of Hamath to the sea of Arabah, according to the word of the Lord God of Israel, which He had spoken through His servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was from Gath-Hepher. The king restored all this from the word of the prophet that God had sent him, a prophet named Jonah. Y'all recognize that name. This is the same Jonah that God said, go to Nineveh. Jonah's here telling this king, this is what the Lord says to do. And this is verse 26 then tells us why God told Jonah to tell the king that. For the Lord saw that the affliction of Israel was very bitter, and whether bond or free, there was no helper for Israel. So He saw that the condition Israel was in, God in His mercy, the same God we serve today, in His mercy, looked down at Israel and said, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to help because you're under such affliction. Same thing He does today. Sometimes we feel like, well, this country's a lost cause, or, God's still just as merciful. God's still in control. He can still send the help as He deems necessary. It says, verse 27 again, says, because the Lord did not say that He would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, but He saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, the son of Joash. Interestingly enough, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, was ungodly. He was a wicked king. But he used this wicked king to save the nation of Israel. Try not to make that circumstantial for today. Try not to say, hey, even though we're an ungodly nation, even though we have ungodly rulers, God can still save us. I say that, I tell you to try not to kind of half-heartedly, jokingly, because it's very difficult not to associate what Israel was going through at that time, being an ungodly nation, and what we're going through today, being an ungodly nation. But verse 28 says, the rest of the acts of Jeroboam and all that he did, his might, and how he made war, and how he recaptured for Israel from Damascus and Hamath what had belonged to Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Jeroboam rested with his fathers, the kings of Israel. Then Zechariah, his son, reigned in his place. I guess the thinking point for chapter 14 there would be when we discuss the difference in Israel and Judah and relate it to today, when you see somebody that seems to be a little more blessed and you, in your head, you think, well, they're outside the will of God. We never need to associate success or belongings. We never need to associate that with someone's closeness or walk with God. Because you can be in God's will, you can be walking with God and still face a lot of troubles, and still be financially poor. You can still be in need. You can be very wealthy and not be. And sometimes culture or society tends to say, they're doing really well. They're really blessed by God. It might not be God that's blessing them. Like I said, the devil's more than happy to send you what he needs to send you to hell. We have to be careful to know where our blessings are coming from. Anybody got any questions for chapter 14?